Okay, we're in. You're going to start clicking them in. Okay, welcome everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are.
Hello,
welcome to
Louis.
Future Capital Conversations. It's part of my favorite part when we start seeing, hi Louis.
Hi.
How are you? If you're just joining us, just know that you come in, let's keep with Zoom lingo, you come in as an attendee and we are promoting you to a panelist. This way, morning Keaton, this way you can join our community. Feel free to share your video. If you feel comfortable, we'd love to see you. You don't have to share your video if you want to stay incognito, that's okay as well. Good morning, Mr. Kennedy.
Rodolfo,
good morning, Rodolfo.
Lawrence,
Mr. Kennedy, how are you, sir?
Let's see everybody.
Oh, great. Great to see everybody. Hey, Heather. Hey, Lawrence. Hey,
Good
Steve.
morning. Oh, fantastic. Good morning, Teresa.
Jayton, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Excellent.
Hey,
So you're gonna hear a few reminders. Everyone comes in as attendees. We are promoting you to panelists, so you can join at your level of comfort. Feel free to share your video if you'd like. We'd love to see you. If you prefer to stay a little more incognito or not share your video for whatever reason, if you have something going on, that's okay as well. We're just excited all of you to join us today to spend some time. We have a beautiful lineup of extraordinary individuals to join all of you extraordinary individuals. And it's an honor to be here on our Future Capital Conversations. Let's give it a few more minutes. Everyone's joining. We're gonna dive right in. Mr. Taylor, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. For some of you, I just wanna explain, we are on our company offsite, Lawrence and I, and due to COVID, we are in separate locations. One of the gentlemen that we're bringing in to help us with our offsite, which is our deep planning, like a 1 year, 3 year, 10-year planning for the company. I think Lawrence described it as amazing and wonderful, and sometimes with the planning feels perhaps like you're going to the dentist. But part of that, which I love that description, but part of that, it was suggested that we actually go to a different location than our normal day-to-day. So I am here in Cape Cod, about half a mile from the ocean, which when I was deciding where to go, that was by water was my preference. Lawrence, I'll let you share where you are.
I am hanging out in Newport, Rhode Island with a beautiful view here and spotty internet. So if I get to be lagging a little bit, my apologies in advance. But so far we're on a roll this morning and it's so wonderful to see all these beautiful faces coming in and names. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to get underway in just a couple minutes because we have 3 amazing guests that are going to be joining us this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So just know that as you're joining, I'm almost done saying this line. If you're sick of hearing me say it, but we're promoting all of you to attendees. You come in as attendees. We're promoting you to panelists. We'd love to see you. This is really a collaboration and a gathering for all of us. That's why if you feel comfortable sharing your screen, please do so. If not, that's okay as well. But we have a beautiful lineup. If you have participated and joined us for our prior meetings, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. It's an honor to have you. Each month we do these calls, Future Capital Conversations, on the 2nd Wednesday of every month at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. These meetings are recorded, so feel free, you'll all receive a notice after it for the recording. We upload them to our YouTube, so even if you miss them in the future or want to review the past ones, you can do that on the YouTube channel. But it is an honor. The format of today's call is we gather 3 extraordinary individuals. So today we have quite a lineup from Catherine Collins, who is one of our first 50 founding members of Future Capital, gathering over a year ago at the United Nations. We have Tim Kelly joining us and Sarah joining us as well. I can't wait for you all to meet everyone and to hear your voice as well. We allow for the 3 to kind of really very interactive. So they'll do a presentation of the work they're doing in the world, how that resonates with Future Capital, and then we open it up for questions. So feel free at any time to pop your question in chat. We'll make sure we address it. We'll do our best to get to all questions to hear all of you, but just know that we'll make sure we get back to you if we have any follow-up questions as well. So now that we're all here, let's dive right in. Welcome. I'm excited to introduce Lawrence Ford for those of you that know Lawrence. For those of you that don't know Lawrence, Lawrence is the founder and chairman of Future Capital. And he is the founder and CEO of Conscious Capital Wealth Management. The beautiful analogy that I've adopted that I actually just want to share with all of you is that Lawrence helps kind of create in my mind was think of what the work we do as a veggie burger, where the bottom of the bun is really the transformational work, his writing, his speaking, how he really gets out there in the world from a transformational side. That top piece of the bun is the work we're doing with you all here at Future Capital and our partners with the United Nations and our partners at World Academy of Art and Science. And then the middle, that juicy veggie burger is the work we do at Conscious Capital, helping individuals utilize the power of money to make the world a better place. And with that, I'm actually have spoken way too much. I'm going to pass it to Lawrence so we can dig in. Lawrence, over to you.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. I see some wonderful faces in here from around the world, and thank you, everybody, for joining. We kind of have an inside joke here with the group, and when I say I'll be brief, everybody laughs, but this morning I will really do it, I promise, because we've got such great speakers ahead of us. So most of all of you I see here have either first 50 with us at the United Nations a little over a year ago. Some of you are a little bit new, but I'll be very brief. There's a wonderful gentleman on the call today, Will Kennedy, from the Office of Partnerships at the United Nations, who's a partner of ours, as well as Sean Celine, who is from UNCTAD, and they are great partners with us at the UN. But Will Kennedy, a whole bunch of years ago, maybe 3 years ago or something like that, we met each other on the West Coast, and he had asked me essentially to lead a movement around this nexus of consciousness and capital. And hello, Mr. Will Kennedy. Thanks for popping in. So if you don't know Will Kennedy, if you do know Will Kennedy, you know he's an angel and you're a big fan already. If you don't, you should get to know him. He's an amazing human being and the work he does is extraordinary for the world. So Conscious Capital was really born out of a very simple philosophy that is the two most powerful tools we have as a species is our consciousness. We could use many words around that, but essentially that's everything that we think of before we manifest it out into the world. And this thing called capital, which is arguably one of the most powerful tools we have around the world that we've created as a species. So putting those two together is really what we're looking to do, bringing in multi-stakeholders from around the globe to come in at things with a different consciousness and a different perspective to change the trajectory of where we're going by using those two powerful tools. So this morning, what I'd like to do is I'd like to lead us, as we always do, into a little moment of silence and really just settle into that. After that, as Heather was saying, we're going to bring on, I'll bring on Ketan, who leads one of our working groups, who is doing a tremendous job with that. And then we'll move into the rest of our speakers and have a lot of fun and open it up for a lot of exchange and conversations while the speakers are talking as well. So let's all just kind of settle ourselves in. Take a deep breath during these crazy times of too many screens and too many Zoom meetings. And just really let yourself settle in with some deep breaths and breathe in a vision of peace in the world and out all of the stress that you might have taken on your body. And just allow yourself to come present with all these great, beautiful people that we're amongst today. Okay, and when you're ready, come back with the rest of the group. And before I hand it off to my good friend Ketan, I want to just frame a little bit more about what we do here and really what we've become. We're happily a non-organization. We are not a nonprofit. We haven't even organized into anything that you would be able to recognize from a legal standpoint. We have beautiful people who are working with us and an incredible leadership team with Steve Sheath, who's up top here. Give us a wave, Steve. Many of you know Steve, I'm sure. And Patty Clower in from Mexico. And everybody knows the wonderful Heather Desjardins, who leads us in the morning. And you know, this tireless work behind the scenes of this non-entity bringing this stuff together, and we really appreciate that, as well, of course, as our partners at the UN and our partners at the World Academy of Art and Science. So what do we do here? Why are we here? What is this all about? What we're doing on these monthly calls is very simple. And again, I'm going to give not a veggie burger, but I'm going to give an image of a garden. So what we do is we've really created this fertile soil with beautiful people who come into this place. And we allow 3 people a week to come in who are doing wonderful work in the nexus of consciousness and capital. And the purpose of that is to let them drop their seeds in this garden so we can all come together to help lift them up individually, inspire them bilaterally, you know, find a connection. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were doing that work. Let me reach out to you. Or sometimes collectively when it starts to take roots. And when it starts to take roots, it moves into a working group with us. And that is a perfect segue to Ketan because he's leading one of the working groups. Over to you, my friend Ketan. Oh, you're muted. Need to unmute.
Got it. Thanks, Lawrence. Great to be here. Great to see so many good faces I know. Let me describe a little bit of what we do. So just some personal background. I have a background in industry, then consulting, and then banking and finance. Lastly with Goldman Sachs, where I led their strategic group, which conducted dialogues and strategic thinking and advice to our largest clients. I left them because I had an entrepreneurial urge to set something up myself and had the opportunity to leave with some friends and establish a business that invests with our values in an emerging market in India to see if we can make a difference while we deliver profits and returns to our investors around the world. It's been a wonderful endeavor and great fun. This particular project that I'm involved in was really born out of Lawrence, Will Kennedy, and Chantaline together hosting a great event last year on September the 11th in New York. Many great ideas came out of it. There were such wonderful people there. Some of them are actually on the panel today and in the audience too. And we came together with these ideas and prioritized one of them, which is quite ambitious, to see if we could launch a movement where finance would become and be seen to be a force for good in the world, a kind of good, positive citizen for the changes that need to happen in the world to finance big change. Those of us that have worked in the industry, and there's quite a few on this team that know that the industry is very wide and very broad. It's a broad church of people, many of whom are working really hard to make very positive change. And so we defined this idea of positive change as a change for the common good. That common good we defined in terms of how we might measure it as 5 things: ESG, sustainability and the SDGs, impact, corporate social responsibility, and taking care of one's people, the people that we work with every day and the people in the organization. And the thought was that if the leaders of the financial world worldwide were doing these 5 things really well, they would be pushing the boundaries of what good looks like for a financial institution. Now, clearly, to reform capitalism, to make huge changes, takes even much more than this. But these were the indicators that we were looking for to see if we could find the evidence of this big change that was happening in highly profitable, successful market leaders in finance, and encourage the tens of thousands that might not be doing as well to really focus on this big change. I'm pleased to say the group is energetic, mobilized, very active. We have Lawrence in the group, we have Catherine, we have Mark Sloss, Gil Friend, Frank Dixon, Steve Lovnick, and Terry Mulder. And together we've crafted the story, taken it out, and now engaged 50 institutions around the world. They're some of the largest institutions in their regions and in their sectors. They include sovereign wealth funds, large banks, pension funds, and so on. And so representative of the geographies of the world, but representative also of the subsectors within finance. And what we found is that they are dynamic, they are doing so much, and they really are pushing the boundaries of what good looks like. And they are participating in many, many UN projects to measure what ESG is, to define it, to participate in sustainability. They've started to institute how they apply the metrics to see their impact on SDGs. Some of them have very big outlier programs where they invest in development and community programs and so on. So there is already a force and a movement out there in finance pushing this boundary. We think if we can tap that and figure out how to spread that message and get more and more people to join, we'll create a movement of big change. And so that's the endeavor. We're about 3/4 of the way through it. We now know the 50 or 60 institutions actually that we wish to engage, and they are heavily engaged in helping us to find the data so that we can evidence this. We should complete the project by mid-December, which will mean that the first phase gives all the metrics and a fairly detailed report about what's really happening in the industry and how it's changing. And we hope to hand that over to our sponsors, coaches, and the oversight we're getting from people like Will and Chantaline, in particular to decide how we now take that forward and magnify that impact. I'm going to pause there because, Lawrence, I think that gives probably a good flavor for how it works and what we're doing, and the energy that we're feeling from the industry already.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. You know, Ketan, it's like, you know, the goal of this was almost kind of ridiculous. And it's been so much fun to be able to see you, Ketan, just like driving through, does not take no for an answer. It's like every time I check in with Ketan, I mean, he's very polite saying I am part of the group. I fly in and help out the best I can, but it's been extraordinary, the momentum and what you've been able to accomplish. And, you know, the big surprise at the end of this, if we can pull it all together, will just be amazing of what type of ripples it can make in the world. So I applaud you for that, and thank you very much. And anybody, you know, who's excited about that, let us know, and we'll keep you posted on what the working group's doing. And since, as I promised about being brief, we actually are a little ahead of schedule. So if anybody has any questions for Ketan and what's happening, we could open that up for a couple minutes before we move on to Catherine and Steve.
There was actually a question that came into chat, Ketan, if you want to discuss a little bit and explain. The question was, what's ESG? The individual said, I know what an SDG is and 17 SDGs, but questioning what that ESG is. So do you think you can elaborate a little bit on that?
So ESG is the environmental, social, and governance that an organization undertakes. And so it's a series of policies, procedures, and then they institutionalize these policies and procedures in terms of how they give out their financing, how they conduct themselves internally, and the impact, therefore, it should make on the environment as a result of their activities. So it's something that's been around for a very long time now. Maybe 15 years ago, I think some of the people that are in this group and in this audience today were some of the pioneers, actually, of this movement. Yeah. They established the first metrics, and they started to push this out into the world. Today, the leading financial institutions that we've spoken to have all embraced these ideas. And of course, some of them embrace them, but haven't operationalized them full enough. But amongst the top 50, we're finding almost everybody is doing that. Yeah. And so to be very practical, it leads you to decide what you will and won't do to make sure that your impact on the environment, on society, and in terms of how you conduct yourself in terms of governance is positive.
Excellent. Good explanation. And, you know, it's amazing. You know, it's an understatement. We have some of the actual gods, granddaddies of the industry on the call, not the least of which is Steve Sheath. And you'll hear from Catherine coming up too. And others, if I forgot you, and of course, Frank Dixon, you know, who was even before ESG and really born out of his work where ESG came as well from the technical side. So it's incredible the amount of fascinating, wonderful people we have here.
Lawrence, I should add another piece, which is, you know, in the group, in our little subgroup, the active subgroup, we have people who are experts on systems change, like Frank, people who are real practitioners on a daily basis implementing this in a large financial institution, like Catherine, people who are creating entrepreneurial businesses like Mark Ross. You know, there's such a wide variety of skills, expertise being brought to play. But as Lawrence said, what it really takes is for those of us that have the relationships to reach out to them, you know, the very big institutions in finance, and engage them so that they wish to participate in this project. And, you know, there's no shortcut to that. You've got to call them up and convince them. And, you know, they're involved in so many things. The inclination might be to say no, and our job is to explain why it has to be a yes, so that they participate and we create this movement. And so Lawrence, absolutely right. It was an idea which we've had to figure out how to turn into reality, and I think we're getting there, Lawrence. You know, I'm going to be conservative as the project lead and project manager of it and say I'm going to wait till it's done, but it feels very positive right now.
Yeah, that's really tremendous. And there's a couple of things I want to highlight. Number one is that, you know, and also we're working, when I say at the highest level of the largest organizations, that's not an understatement. I mean, we're talking top level. So we're really talking about doing it from the top down. And the other thing that I want to mention and just really highlight is really the nature of what we're doing here is that, you know, there's a famous quote that everybody's heard a million times, I'm sure, from Einstein, but it's, you know, no problem is solved by the same consciousness that created it. And so by coming in with multi-stakeholders, everything from indigenous wisdom to private banking, to even just if we get more specific as an example, as Ketan was saying, you know, on the retail side of the industry, all the way to the wholesale side of the industry, to the manufacturing side of the asset management side of the industry and the institutional side, and then the private equity side, you know, it's amazing what's covered, you know, from the different perspectives. And that's what it really takes to be able to, you know, make the change. And I'm just speaking specifically now with that one working group. We've got many other wonderful things happening as well. Any other comments, Ketan, before we move on, or anybody else have questions?
Sure. I want to leave an important thought, I hope, for the group that are assembled, which is if you look at the sources of wealth, there's $270 trillion apparently last year that was the source of net liquid assets. There's something like nearly another 200 trillion that are illiquid assets. Of the 270 trillion dollars of liquid assets, 200 of those are in the hands of households. So individuals are the most powerful force in finance. They choose to allocate that money, about 200 and so trillion of it, to asset managers of various types. Banks and pension funds and insurers and sovereign wealth funds and so on. We're focused on those managers of the money to see if we can mobilize how they then deploy it. But the real power behind money is, of course, the household that has the $200 trillion in their hands in the first place. And given what's happening in the world, we're not very far away from those individuals deciding that they will not give their money to financial institutions that do not do good, that do not meet the values that they choose to live their lives by, and they want the world to live their lives by. And the internet and the connectivity we have will change the whole system regardless of whether financial institutions react quickly enough to institute the changes themselves. And this is the era we live in today. This massive change is upon us, and it will happen. You know, we're trying to make sure it happens in a positive way where the people who manage the money do it well, because many of them do, especially the leaders, but you know, it will happen regardless. So it's an interesting time of big change.
It is. Yeah, it's really, you know, as the indigenous wisdom will tell us, it's a time of waking, you know, through the crisis. And, you know, people are waking up and realizing, you know, if I don't have to sacrifice my returns as a household and as an individual investor, and I can do good and not be unconscious anymore about where my money's going, then, you know, we do every day with our daytime job, reminding people, Ketan, was your point, is that, you know, they are the power. They do have the power. They've forgotten how much power they hold in those $200 trillion. So thank you for making that, you know, bringing that home. I would like to pivot now. Thank you very much, Ketan. I'd like to pivot now over to Stephen, my friend Stephen. And by the way, and Catherine, we're talking about two of the, you know, kings and queens here of ESG and conscious investing. And it couldn't be a better segue to hand it over to them. But I also want to remind everybody on this call that this is not all about finance. Remember, this is about consciousness and capital. So you're going to hear today from some of these speakers. You're all here for a reason. I've heard from some people occasionally, they say, you know, I'm not quite sure if I fit because I'm not, you know, the finance guy or money person. And I want to remind everybody, and you'll be reminded today by these great speakers, that it's really all about our purpose is bringing these two things together and the work that's being done from multiple different disciplines around the world. But I'm going to hand it off to my friend Stephen and Catherine, and take it away.
Thank you, Lawrence. Really my great pleasure to be speaking with you all today from Boulder, Colorado, which, by the way, topped the list of the best places to live in the U.S. in the October 13th issue of U.S. News and World Report. Now, we've been trying to keep this a secret, but the secret's out, I guess. But it is truly a pleasure to introduce my friend Catherine Collins, who interestingly is an active member, as Ketan just mentioned, of the Capital Working Group, and no doubt will provide more depth and detail around the you know, the ESG, you know, how to implement, how to think about, how to make investment decisions utilizing environment, social, and governance factors. Catherine is an amazing human being, beautiful, capable, insightful, inspiring, soulful. And I guess I could stop there, except that applies to all of you. So I have to go a little further with Catherine. She's the first head of sustainable investing at Putnam Investments in Boston, responsible for 2 ESG funds, both of which are dramatically outperforming their benchmarks year to date. Now, she may not say that because she's under, you know, the compliance, you know, legal umbrella, but I can because I'm no longer licensed. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to toot your horn just a little bit here, Catherine. Previous to joining Putnam, she held positions at Fidelity as portfolio manager and head of equity research. She had also founded Honeybee Capital. And if you don't know about Honeybee, I encourage you to Google that and to sign up for her incredible weekend. I guess it's Sunday morning. I'm not even sure what to call it, but it's so good. I look forward to reading it every Sunday. Catherine has traveled widely as a pilgrim and a volunteer. She's got an MTS degree from Harvard Divinity School. She studied biomimicry. She's the author of Natural Investing, which is all about bringing biomimicry, the natural world, if you will, not only into investment, but into life. So Catherine, please step into our spotlight here this morning.
Awesome. Steve, thank you for that. What a generous introduction. I was reflecting in preparing for this morning on our first meeting, and I don't know if you even remember this, but we first crossed paths at the famous SRI in the Rockies conference. And at the time I was working for a very, very large investment firm that was maybe not at the forefront of sustainability and investing with purpose. And I have to tell you, I was not met with universal open arms showing up at that conference. And Steve was a very notable and important exception to that, really pulling me aside in the very beginning and saying, essentially, keep going. This is important work and you're needed just as everyone is needed. And so, Steve, I don't know that I've gotten to thank you for that, and it seems like the perfect setting to do so. To me, that's such an important reflection of the value of this group. I think you heard it in Ketan's comments as well, the idea that there's this web of activity that even for those of us engaged in it is not always visible. And yet it's vital in sort of forming this foundation that's rippling across all of our different endeavors. And then the other element this group has for me that is so vital, especially now, is there's also this sort of open sky of possibility and inspiration that comes from it. And so again, I'm just hugely grateful to this group for providing both those roots and that sense of open sky. I'll tell you a little about my work, and I'll preface it by saying I'm going to give you the very human version of my work and not the spreadsheet version of my work. But if you want to talk spreadsheets and data and returns, I am happy to do that anytime. It is what a lot of my waking hours are spent doing. But for this particular gathering, there's a chance to maybe have a slightly different conversation. So as you heard, I am a professional investor, have been for 30 years now. And I'm an investor because I'm curious. The whole reason I was drawn to investing in the first place is, as we've already reflected, you know, investing has some influence in shaping our world. And so the connection between these seemingly abstract, you know, dots on a screen and the actual world we get to live in is what has drawn me in and kept me captivated all this time. And that has continued. I started my career in a very conventional setting for about 20 years. And then, as Steve alluded to, I had to leave to really get back to this root of connection. Our field, like many other fields, has become ever more specialized. And the more senior you get, often the more narrow your actual job becomes. And I wanted to be going this way, kind of expanding. And my job was actually narrowing. So in 2007, I left the perch I was in and went on this bigger, broader arc of discovery, kind of following, again, my own curiosity. That's when I attended divinity school. It's when I studied biomimicry with Janine Benyus, and had my own research firm to kind of follow my own passion and interests. And it was all with the goal of getting to the roots of sustainability and how they linked to the roots of investing, not way up here, you know, kind of the day-to-day tactics, but something underneath. I've brought all that now to my role at Putnam. So I am the first head of sustainable investing at Putnam. I'll tell you, on the surface, it might look like a very conventional package. So I've got very conventional business cards, and I, in normal times, go to a very conventional office, and I wear very conventional clothes to our very conventional meetings. But underneath that, there is some revolutionary stuff happening. So for one thing, the fact that when Putnam decided to make a commitment in this arena, there were a couple important conditions. First, they were making the decision to invest in this direction at the same time that they had to really dramatically and kind of painfully cut back in other parts of the operation. So it was a very proactive, deliberate decision. Secondly, they decided that if they were going to make a commitment to sustainable investing, they wanted it to be just that. They wanted it to be a core investment function. And I think this is really vital when we're thinking about the design of potential solutions in the world. Within an investment organization like Putnam, you want to be as close to those investment decisions as you can be if you aim to have some sort of, I don't know, influence or wherewithal. In many organizations, the folks who have my title sit near the investment function, but they're not actually making the investment decisions. And so the fact that a pretty conventional firm like Putnam had come to a very matter-of-fact business decision that this was an important direction to go in because it had investment merit is a really important shift in psychology, from thinking in sort of either or terms to thinking of this as an additive, beneficial set of activities. So that was a really different premise to launch my team and my role at Putnam. I do manage 2 large mutual fund portfolios now, about $6 billion. And again, it's important that the person doing my job is actually making those investment decisions. So those are some design elements that I wanted to highlight about my role. Again, though, it's a pretty conventional wrapper. A mutual fund is a very boring part of finance. Putnam is a very old firm. This is not the most creative, like outer edge stuff you can do. Again, I think that's sort of where the power is. So I wanted to spend just a minute and tell you about some of the things we're doing, again, a little bit under the surface that I hope are planting different seeds, you know, not just within Putnam, but within finance more broadly. Some are really simple examples. So in our written materials, for example, I have banned all of the conventional graphics of finance that tend to be either gears or funnels. This is not a machine. So all of our imagery now you'll see is sort of like spirals and arrows and circles, and the design team does not like it. But it is much more true to what we're trying to create. Again, this kind of connected, integrated whole. My team works on sort of a seasonal model for our work. We have time for rest. We have time for harvest. We have special research meetings on the equinox and the solstice to talk about topics that are too big to fit into like a normal day. These are small things, but again, they're kind of starting to take root. Every week at our Thursday team meeting, we start with best things. What's the best thing that happened this week? Because by Thursday, we're usually a little bit tired. And I don't call it a gratitude practice, but it is a gratitude practice. And now they're doing it way when I'm not even there, which is a very good sign. So these little things in terms of how the work is done, I think are very important. Many of you are friends with our dear Susan Davis, and Susan very early in this part of my journey said to me, Catherine, you need to stop preaching. I know you went to divinity school, but you need to throw a better party. You know, you need to do something that is so clearly better and more fun and additive that everyone just wants to join. And that's how change happens. And so I have really tried to take those wise words from Susan out into everything that we're doing. We also have a team motto. Our team motto is research, alpha, impact, joy, which is sort of dorky and also very powerful. As Steve alluded to, you know, this has been a challenging test in so many dimensions the past year for all of us, both human-wise and professionally. And I'm happy to say that our investment process has stood that test. We're seeing terrific results currently and a lot of attention, which is great. So the research alpha impact, thumbs up, but it's not a joyful time. And I do want to be candid about the massive disconnect. You know, how is it possible that thoughtful investing in the stock market right now can be generating 24% returns, 30% returns, 50% returns, and yet the world is just so immersed in suffering in every dimension. At the same time that it's a good proof point that investing with this holistic, sustainable mindset is a good way to go, that underlying disconnect is not the sign of a healthy system overall. And so I don't want to skip that part. It's a sort of an unspoken question within finance right now, and this is one of the few places I think it can and should be spoken. So with that in mind, I had just a final thought on this question of, you know, where is the joy? When I'm a little bit stuck, I tend to turn to elders, and one of the elders I love is Václav Havel, and some of you might know his writings on hope, the politics of hope. I'm just going to quote from that as we close this part of the conversation today. He says, "Hope is a state of mind, not a state of the world. Hope in this deep and powerful sense is not the same as joy that things are going well, or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously heading for success. But rather, hope is an ability to work for something because it is good. Hope is definitely not the same as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense and is worth working towards, regardless of how it turns out." So I think instead of our last piece of our motto being joy, perhaps it should be hope. And the question is, where is the hope? And I have to tell you, I find tremendous hope in looking around at my colleagues who have embraced this new, bigger, interesting set of questions with open arms and like honest enthusiastic engagement. I have hope when I talk to CEOs who are asking those same questions of their own teams. You know, how can they care for their teams and their communities in an environment where all sorts of resources seem to have vanished overnight? I take hope in looking at this group and how we've come together from so many different perches to support each other in different ways. And I take huge hope in looking at the newer, younger folks on my team who are asking these bigger, more holistic questions in a deeply rigorous analytical way from the very beginning of their careers. They're not going to have to do something and leave it and wander in the wilderness and then come back and try to synthesize. They're already in this sort of reconnected mode. And so this theme of reconnection or maybe of recognizing the connection that has been there all along is something that is deeply informing my work. And again, I'm happy to talk about the tactics, but I just want to end by thanking this group for the hope that you are embodying every day.
Thank you, Catherine. A quick question, just picking up on hope and reconnection and, you know, and perhaps, you know, the next generation not having to go wander in the wilderness to figure out how to connect the dots between life and money. You know, you and I have talked separately offline, and you've told me some really interesting stories, and you may or may not want to mention names of some of the companies, you know, some of those CEOs, some of those, you know, C-suite conversations that you've had. But I think that if you were to tell us perhaps one of those, it might help, you know, those folks on the call who are not, you know, intimately involved in applying ESG factors, you know, to investment decision-making, a little bit about, you know, give a little bit more insight into how a portfolio that's built on that kind of analysis is so much better for us as investors and better for society at large.
Yeah, Steve, thanks. I think this links a little bit to the project that Ketan briefed us on as well. One thing that's a little bit of a tension in my world, and probably in a lot of our worlds in different ways, is I want all the data to be able to analyze and prove all these important points in a really deeply empirically rigorous way. And yet the machine of ESG is a machine like any other. And so there is a real danger that we let the tail wag the dog, I guess, and that the metrics get in the way of the substance instead of actually accelerating the substance and spurring it on. And so one easy story here that might illustrate the point of what we're trying to do and its importance is very first meeting I had at Putnam with the CEO of a big healthcare company. We went through the whole meeting. We talked about half the time about their own team and some really innovative investments they were making to help people develop lots of different capacities and open up opportunities and keep them at the company longer. And it really was this great kind of holistic way to think about, you know, development of a true community inside the company. And then we spent the other half talking about this amazing new set of diagnostics they were developing that had these tremendous patient benefits and how it was going to improve quality of care so dramatically and increase effectiveness and decrease suffering. And, you know, very animated conversation. And at the end I said, well, okay, are there any other key sustainability issues that you want to make sure we understand? And he just went, oh, those ESG people, I can't stand it. And I said, well, hello, that would be me. And this light bulb went off for him. He said, oh, is that what we're talking about? You know, every time someone says ESG to me, it's just accompanied by a 300-page survey that I have to fill out. And then 6 months later, they tell me how deficient I am. Like, it's not a very uplifting exercise. And so to me, that was just a great signal about the value of keeping the substance front and center and using the metrics kind of underneath as opposed to the other way around, and keeping the humanity at the center as well, like real conversation instead of exchanging spreadsheets.
Thank you for bringing humanity and soul into the boardroom. Really appreciate it. In the interest of time, I'm going to pass the baton to Patty. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It was wonderful to hear your both your story and your principles and your policies, especially in the role you're playing. So, you know, big thank you to you.
And everybody has to go out and buy Catherine's book, by the way. So maybe
Month of Sundays.
Yes.
It's called The Month of Sundays. And I look forward to her blog every single week.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's my honor and my privilege and my pleasure to introduce Tim Kelly. And so Tim was also one of the founding members of Future Capital when we gathered last year. And Tim is an international change agent, and he's a thought leader committed to ushering in new paradigm systems and methods. And Tim has worked with top leaders in many fields with the intention to redesign and evolve society. So that's why he's here with us, because that's really the underlying intention of Future Capital. And so Tim has trained over 1,000 consultants, therapists, and coaches in his methods. And he is one of the only 7 certified conscious capital consultants in the world. His client lists include top leaders and executive teams from companies like Alibaba and ING, Oracle, Nabisco, Pricewaterhouse. And he's also worked with government ministers and presidential candidates, including 2 countries, to help them discover their higher purpose. So he is the author of the book, The True Purpose, and several other books. And I am just so grateful that he agreed to join us last year and become part of our community. He is a friend and a colleague, and I have personally experienced his True Purpose work, and it has been invaluable to me in honing how my intention and attention to what I'm doing in my life. He has provided his work freely and willingly to our Future Capital group to help us focus our group so that we can amplify our collective intentions. So without further ado, I give you Tim Kelly.
Thank you so much, Patty. I'm delighted to be here. Early as it is in California, and me not being a morning person, you guys are worth waking up early for. I also want to say I'm very happy to see some old friends from the True Purpose Institute and from Conscious Capitalism here. It looks like we're getting our tentacles out into the world and drawing in change agents, which makes me very happy. So I was really delighted to be invited to join Future Capital because I receive instructions from time to time, let me put it that way. And one of the tasks I've been given is to find the higher purpose of money and transform humanity's relationship to money. And although I work with a lot of CEOs and even some CEOs, even some executive teams at places like ING, none of them were really a fertile garden in which to grow that particular project. And so I'd been waiting for years to find a context in which it would make sense to do that. And so I'm really happy to be here and to be working with all these wonderful people. So just a tiny bit about myself, because I want to make sure I leave time for questions. My background is in math and computer science. I was a commanding officer in the Navy. I worked my way up from swabbing decks to running assault craft and submarine repair things and stuff like that. So I have a very sort of odd and diverse background that's not very finance specific. It's much more change the world specific than it is finance specific. And so that leads me to work in various ways. I won't get through all the personal transformations and dark nights of the soul that led me to eventually doing what I do. In terms of scale, the smallest scale that I work with is individuals, and those tend to be CEOs or politicians or other folks who are in a position to influence large systems. And I only work with people who personally feel called to change the world, folks that I call change agents, who are trying to get the world to change faster. And I help them transform themselves into better and more effective agents of change, what one might call new paradigm leaders or new paradigm global leaders. That's one of my websites, is New Paradigm Global Leader. I love that URL. So that they can become a model of the world they're trying to create, because we're all kind of tweeners. We're all in between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. and some of our old paradigm habits and traits and consciousness and behaviors prevent us from creating the new paradigm stuff we're trying to create. So that's the work I do with individuals. With organizations, I tend to do one of two things, which is either find their higher purpose, and that's one of the things the True Purpose Institute teaches, and we have some folks here who've taken those courses, and also Chris Taylor, who teaches these courses on how to find the higher purpose of people and how to find the higher purpose of companies and organizations. So this is a new thing that's becoming all the rage, and it's really good for what we're trying to do here, because companies that are operating according to a higher purpose are much more likely to have the kind of impact we want them to have. So a good example, and I personally love to work in industries that everyone hates. So one of my favorite clients is a company that sells valves to the oil and gas industry. And they're such a new paradigm company. They use holacracy. They don't have any hierarchy. They're totally purpose-driven. They're actually called a for-purpose enterprise is the organizational system they're using. And I'm talking later today with the founder of it to talk about our strategy for transforming the oil and gas industry. That's like a perfect example. If I could get a cigarette company, I would be all over it, or a fast food company. Well, let me get to that in a minute. So then that's sort of the company level of things. The next level up is working with countries and also with intractable social problems. So I have worked with Israel and Colombia on their higher purpose. And actually Marcela Rodriguez she's on the call right now. She was the leader of the Colombia project for a while. So it turns out that these same methods can be used to find purpose information about countries. And I'm writing a book about the new paradigm of countries based on kind of the history and evolution of countries, treating society as software and asking, how do we upgrade the software? This is my computer science background here. What's the next software revision of our operating system that we call society? And if you want, you can look up my TEDx talk. I did a TEDx talk on why countries behave like children, which it's very short and you'll find it very entertaining and informative. And for intractable social problems, I was working on peace in the Middle East for a while, got kind of stuck there. So now I'm working on slavery as my intractable social problem du jour. Let me think if there's anything else I want to say. Yeah, to me, it's all part of what I would call revealing and creating heaven on earth. Like that's the project. Like as humans, we can create any world we want. Is this the best we can imagine? Is this the best we can do? I don't think so. I think we have the capability to imagine and create something way better than this if we were willing to spend the time to figure out what it is that we want and come to alignment about that. If we could do that, that's the hard part. If we could do that, implementing it would be easy. So I like to set the bar really, really high, right? Instead of like, how do we reduce the squabbling? No. How do we create heaven on earth? Like, why settle for less than that? So I'll yield the remainder of my time for questions.
So you can feel free to type a question in the
chat. Someone wanted to know the name of the company. The company is called Energy Circles. Let me type it. Okay. Energy Circles. This is the Dutch company that does oil, that's transforming the oil and gas industry and selling valves.
So Tim,
yeah.
If I was somebody inside a company and I wanted to, I'm personally that person actually right this minute. And
hypothetically speaking.
But I happen to hypothetically ask, how would you suggest someone go about trying to be a change agent to bring your work to the executive team, to that world, especially because you did highlight you like to go into the old school companies and or industries and change. Mm-hmm. So how would you suggest that works?
Right. So there's a long answer and the short answer. I'll give the longer answer first, which is the long answer is think like a virus, right? Imagine that you've gotten past the immune system and you're inside the organism. Okay. So viruses replicate. That's how they create problems. So you as a change agent, you're a virus inside the system. Now you got to go find some other cell to infect, so it's going to start replicating viruses too. And if you're trying to get to the executive team, you want to work your way up. So who's a readily infectable cell at the next level above you, right? Who's someone who's having a purpose crisis or feels a little dissatisfied with their work or is into spirituality and growth and development or something like that? You could say, hey, come over here, right? And get in relationship with them about that, and then have them do the same thing. That's the long answer. The short answer is, as you know, Patty, the way I find people's purpose is by connecting them to something that already knows what that purpose is and having it explain it to them, right? Which could be their higher self or their unconscious or their dead grandma or God or Allah, Buddha, whatever. I don't care. Whatever they believe in, right? So anything that could help you understand your purpose could also help you come up with an effective strategy for getting to the executive team of the organization. So go ask it. That's the short answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
So
other questions?
So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, what does it look like to bring together a country around a higher purpose, or a large company around a higher purpose at a group level? Because, you know I've had the experience personally, and we've had the experience with Future Capital, but we're almost already, purpose fit for the true purpose work. So I'm sort of curious about that.
Well, with the company, I mean, often the company purpose comes from one person, right? The CEO falls and hits his head in the shower and comes to work the next day and says, I found our purpose, right? But that's actually the really slow way to do it, because then that person has to spend the next 2 years trying to enroll everybody in that purpose. The faster way to do it is to get lots of people involved in the process and have lots of people trying to sense and download the purpose. Because then once you've found it, all the people who participated will become ambassadors of that purpose. And it doesn't take that much longer to have 100 or 1,000 people contribute to a purpose than it does to have 10. It's surprisingly not as much additional work as you'd think. So that's what I'd say about organizations. Now, CEOs are often very scared of allowing just the regular employees to influence the purpose. That's way above their pay grade, right? This is part of the stratification of society that we're trying to push against here, because sometimes it's the janitor who gets the purpose right. With countries, what we've done is we have yet to enroll a government in taking on a purpose project, and there's actually some reason to believe that that might be a problem if it were sponsored by the government. So what we've done instead is we gather groups of leaders from different segments of society, military, religious, business, government, NGOs, get them all in a room, and we can get people from any belief system or cross-section of belief systems to align on a purpose for the country in a day. And we did it in Israel under really challenging circumstances where we had like secular leftist Tel Aviv Jews and West Bank settlers and Orthodox and Arabs and stuff all in the room at the same time, aligning on a purpose of the country. So we know we can do it under pretty much any conditions, as long as the people are there voluntarily. And so we did that dozens of times in Israel and dozens of times in Colombia. And in each case, the different groups within the same country would get very similar information, which reinforces the idea that the country already has a purpose and they're sensing it, as opposed to that they're making something up. And what we just weren't able to do was get enough funding to scale it up to the national level to make it an official countrywide project and give everyone in the country the opportunity to participate. So that's still in the future.
Hopefully that will be coming. So thank you so much, Tim. There are a few more questions here, but I'm gonna direct them to you personally to maybe-
I'll write in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so that we can give plenty of time for Lawrence to now introduce Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And I will be brief because I can't wait for you guys to get to meet Sarah. I think the technical term for her is she's just freaking awesome. She is most amazing woman. I met her at Nexus Global and I heard her speak, which was fabulous. but it even got better when I got to meet her individually afterwards. And she is just a powerhouse and doing such incredible stuff in the world. And I wanted to kind of bridge this a little bit from Tim Kelly and also from Catherine about, you know, the purpose and why we're here on earth, and aligning our being with our doing is, you know, the most important thing we can do. And I worked with Tim Kelly, so I'm going to share briefly as a bridge over to Sarah. He helped me figure out my mission and my message out to the world. And my mission is to create a peaceful world. And my message is, you're here for a reason, you matter, love yourself, align your being with your doing. There's nothing more important than expressing the reason you are here. When you do, you are at peace, and the world is at peace. And so for us to come to that place, all of these things we're talking about, we need to literally come from a different consciousness, which is the other side of the work we do here at Future Capital. And there is nobody better that can help guide that way of seeing differently than my dear friend, Sarah Minkara. And so I have a whole bunch of formal stuff that I want to say about Sarah. I'm only going to say a couple things, Sarah, and then we'll go back and forth with your introduction. But she's an internationally recognized champion for inclusion, leadership, and individual empowerment and social enterprise, dynamic and memorable, which is an understatement, by the way. I think we need to upgrade that in your bio. Sarah speaks to diverse audiences around the world and facilitates transformative interactive workshops that employ adaptive approaches to social and workplace changes. She's a graduate of Wellesley College and the Harvard Kennedy School. Sarah is the founder and president of Sarah Minkara LLC, an organization that offers courses, workshops, executive coaching, and engages in public speaking opportunities to continue to bring her leading voice in the field of disability, inclusion, empowerment, and authentic leadership to society. She has developed a holistic approach affecting change on individual, institutional, and global levels. Sarah is an advocate, expert, and facilitator in the fields of disability, inclusion, authentic leadership, and social enterprise. There's so much more I could read about her. That's just the beginning. But Sarah, why don't we start a conversation and just let everybody know who you are. And why don't we start with that? I'll start with the easy question. Who is Sarah? And you're muted still, Sarah. There we go.
Am I good? Yes.
Yes, you're more than good.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Lawrence, for that kind introduction. Well, I'm honored to be with you and with everyone here. So who am I? I'm actually going to introduce myself in a non-typical way, and then I'll go into kind of this whole concept of authentic inclusion. I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend, a colleague, a troublemaker in many spaces. I love math. I'm an introvert. I love nature. I love to eat chicken. I am a woman. I am Muslim, and I'm blind, and I'm very proud to be blind. And the reason why I introduce myself in that sense is because a lot of times we introduce ourselves through our work or our education or certain labels that we think that anchors of our value, but there's so much more to us than that. And there's so much more to our story. And this connects to this whole concept of, you know, authenticity. You know, earlier Tim talked about, and Catherine talked about, you know, finding purpose and transforming change and connecting that with how that leads into capital and really bringing forward good into the capital world, right? But in the consciousness aspect, in order for us to really find purpose is how do we actually understand ourselves and embrace who we are and really bring that forward? Because when we do that, we bring in more value and more potential, and we also start exploring our purpose. But a lot of times we're put in a space, in a setting where we're not comfortable bringing our full self forward. And to give an example, disability, many people might see their disability in a negative way or hide it because of how society perceives it. So how do we create spaces where authenticity is a core value that allows people to really find their purpose? So that's that's my purpose right now.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And, you know, there's so much I want to ask you and share, but there's one thing that's like just jumps out, because one of the things is, as deep as the work Sarah does, one of the things I've realized pretty quickly with our lovely friendship, she's a lot of fun and she likes to play and laugh too. So Sarah, what's up with, so this like blows my mind. This is where you bust through boundaries. I was reading in one of your, you know, some of the questions and some of your speaker stuff that you ride a bike.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
I ride.
Tell us about that. It's so cool. And skydive, right?
Yes, I ride bikes, paragliding. I hiked and slid down a volcano in Nicaragua. I've swam with sharks. So I do a lot of crazy things. And I think it's a few different things. I think to the earlier point, there's so much more to our experience and our potential than we realize. And it's so important to push our boundaries and see what potential we have. And I love kind of doing those kind of things. And it allows me to be more free and explore the world in different ways. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And now when we talk about, you know, with a lot of what we're doing here with, and I know there's a lot of the members on this meeting today that would love to hear, you know, some of your speaking stuff that you do and engage with you. So before I get that out of the way, let's make sure that we put, it looks like it's up there, Amelia, right? So how to get in touch with Sarah and the work she does, because she does amazing speaking experiential stuff that could work for your companies. And so in a conventional setting, you know, that would sound like a pitch or, you know, a shameless advertisement, but that's really what we're talking about here, folks, right? I mean, we're talking about coming from a different consciousness with everything we're doing. And so, Sarah, could you talk a little bit about some of the really cools you do about seeing in the dark and, you know, all of that stuff? And I know we don't have enough time for all of it because you do so much, but share some of the things that you do to help shift consciousness to see people different.
Definitely. So the underlying kind of theme across everything that I do is authentic inclusion. And it's this term of that, you know, we bring forward is how do you create spaces that, one, you're able to embrace all of who you are and bring that forward, and you're able to create that same space for others. And that leads to greater innovation, impact, values, and so much more. And the way we do that is actually through a very unique way. We actually remove the lens of sight in our experiences, whether it's workshop, speaking, coaching, we do executive coaching, whether it's one-on-one or across an organization, but we use this tool where we remove the lens of sight. And when you remove the lens of sight, you're actually put in a place where you're forced to get to know one another and interact with one another on a deeper level. Because 85% of what we take in is visual, and those labels turn into assumptions. So when you can't form most of these labels and assumptions, you're forced to get to know one another on a more authentic level. On the reverse side as well, when you're in a setting and you know what, no one can see you and judge you, you become more of your true self. And it's very powerful how we see that being translated across every single person that goes through our workshops. And we take it further and we say, well, our goal is not for you to be blinded, I promise that, but our goal is how do you create spaces where you're able to really embrace authenticity and really able to get every single person bring more of their true value forward. So we do that through our Discovering the Dark workshops that we bring forward to like corporations, government, academic, IGOs, all kinds of spaces. We do it on a broader level through speaking engagements. We do it through courses and executive coaches. We actually work one-on-one with CEOs and other kind of leaders to really help them first understand and recognize their own interaction with authenticity and how they bring it forward and how can they translate that to their own company. And then we also do that in a much deeper level through consultation, where we work very closely with clients and really work across the board. So that's who we are, that's what we do. And it's, you know, people might be like, oh, it's just like unconscious bias training, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that. I mean, there's an element to that. It's actually a training that allows people to become more aware of their own true self and how they're bringing that forward, and also what are the narratives that they're creating for others, and how can they create an empowering space for others. And when that's recognized, so much more purpose can be actualized.
That's awesome. Thank you. And we had, if you didn't know, we had some screens popping up here while you were chatting, so it's perfect. Why don't we do this, because we've got a couple minutes left. I'd like to open it up if there's any questions for Sarah while we're here. Just jump right in. You don't have to put it in chat. If they are already, I missed them, so I apologize. But feel free to just jump right in and unmute yourself. Carol, is that you?
It's me. Good morning. And I'm in my yoga clothes. That's why I don't have my camera on, you guys.
No worries.
But Sarah, I just want to say, you know, fabulous work. And we are honoring people this whole month, like yourself, ability status, you know, heroes doing incredible things. And just want to say, however we can support your work and, you know, perhaps tell your story, would love to be able to do that. So, and we work very closely with someone I'd love you to meet, who's the founder of the Blind Institute of Technology, and he puts to work through technology the 80% visually impaired unemployed. And so happy to make some connections that I think could be really great for, you know, the wonderful work that you're doing as well.
Thank you, Carol. Definitely would love to be in touch. Thank you.
And so this is a perfect example of what happens here. Sometimes it happens live like this. Other times it happens with connections afterwards. If someone could do me a favor, maybe Heather or someone or Patty, do our Facebook page on there. If you're not a member yet, please jump in, because it's unfortunately it's Facebook, yes, but it's the easiest way right now for us to be able to share things like this with each other. So please feel free to go in there and share with the group and then connect individually. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring our speakers together to kind of have a conversation, which is something we always do at the end of, towards the end of this, and then feel free to jump in and ask questions along with this. But we always see a lot of magic and synchronicities, of course, with the work that we're doing between who's speaking at each month. So Tim, Catherine, Sarah, go.
Want to give us a prompting question of some sort? You're just going to throw us in at the deep end.
I have a question. Can I jump in? Is that all right?
Sure.
So Sarah, Tim, I'm so delighted. I think all of us in different ways touched on this inner versus outer kind of development and how vital it is. I'm curious, Sarah, maybe especially for you, although I think, Tim, it translates to your setting as well. Do you have any tips for working with people or teams where the just the underlying fear and sort of walls that have been built up are very, very high? And so, Sarah, I'm thinking of some of your work in particular. There are settings in which I think that work would completely transform my life, and then there are other settings in which I'm too curled in on myself to be open to what might come of it. So I'd love any observations or hints you might have for working in settings where there's just walls after walls after walls. Yeah,
I mean, that's a really good question. And that's actually a very, important point that you're making, and a great challenge and a fear that's in a lot of different spaces, right? These walls and vulnerabilities is a scary thing. And it's a lot of times might not even be welcome in certain spaces. But that's what we're trying to move forward. It's like vulnerability. Yes, there might be discomfort in the beginning, but when you push through that and you know that the space that you're in is, there's trust and it's a safe space for vulnerability to be achieved, then people are going to open up and share more. And there's a, and you went to the DIF school, right? So at the Kennedy School, also there's the adaptive leadership framework from Ronald Heifetz, and he talks about, and this is something we bring forward a lot, is you can never really achieve real change or adaptive change if you don't create disequilibrium. And we need to be comfortable with that disequilibrium, right? To really shake things up a bit and bring out more true voices and perspectives. So we've seen that a lot through our workshops, and especially because people are blindfolded or virtually there's the videos off, right? So much more is shared, and it's very powerful. And that's the question is now for the leaders in the company, how do you actually transform that experience into a policy and into sustainable experience for everyone?
Neat, that's really helpful. Tim, have you seen the same? I'm curious, you've worked across so many settings where those same dynamics, I suspect, are at play.
Yeah, so in the work that we do, I should say, because there are people who are trained in the true purpose methodology on the call, whenever we're finding the purpose of a person or an organization, there's typically like way less than a 1% chance that there won't be fear in the way. And so the classes I just taught yesterday to the consultants who are training these methods were all about, okay, here are the methods you use to reduce the fear level in the room to the point where people can actually ask the question, what is our purpose or what is my purpose, and be present to hear the response. And so we've had to develop several different systems for reducing fear, because anytime you offer transformation to anyone, I don't care how many times you've done it, fear would be a natural response.
Yes.
And you can overpower it, but that doesn't work in all situations.
That's really helpful. Sometimes I describe my divinity degree as a master's degree in fear. It took me till the very end of my studies to realize, oh, this is all we talked about this whole 2 years. Yeah.
But you know, one component that's really important in a lot of this, and I've seen this in a lot of the work that I've done, is trust. How do you create trust within the institutions that you're in, right? Trust to be more open, trust to be more vulnerable, trust to experience your fears and share your fears. Trust is a really important component.
Yeah, and I noticed in some of the
kissing cousin psychological safety.
Right. They knit together, right? Well, and some of the questions had to deal with that I saw flowing through chat as well. Just you know, if you're in an environment where the underlying ground is sort of a mistrustful, unsafe sort of ground, there's just natural limits to how far you're going to get there. And I don't know about your settings, but in finance is very brain first, you know, like, so when we're scared, we just go straight to the calculus of finance. And, you know, sometimes that's just not where the answer lies. I love a good equation, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we lean on that when the actual question is too uncomfortable.
Awesome. Anybody else that is listening in, please, you know, don't be shy. Just unmute and go if you'd like. If not, we'll just continue the conversation. Every once in a while, I call on people like Ernest I called on last week, and he's like, don't do it again.
I just wanted to say, this is Mark Epstein, and I've met many of you over the years, and I love this kind of gathering. And I just wanted to appreciate, this is the first time I'm meeting Sarah, and love Catherine and Tim and everyone that I know, but I really enjoyed having you here, and I'm gonna look at your offerings on your website. I appreciate that, thanks.
That's awesome, Mark. And listen, that's a good segue for me to just say one other thing here. Remember, the essence of what we're doing here is to bring people together. It is a time of for our species to come together and stop building our own dogmas and our own thing. This is mine. This is a time for all of us to come together, because it's the only way that we are going to get the change and transformation we are all looking for. And so that's kind of a segue here too. So I'm going to lay this out to the panel, a small little question. So, you know, when as a species, once in a while, something comes up that's so powerful that's happening like today in change, that we all come together with like a common cause, right? We all get it. We all know we need to make a shift. And it's a really exciting time because it coalesces what was once fragmented. So we have this energy, this potentiality for this power to really drive change. And then when I watch what happens so often, and it's not because people are bad, it's also, I think it's part of because it's their purpose and they're good. Everybody creates their own little thing, goes off and builds their own little religion, their own little project, their own little, organization. And then it's like, oh man, we missed it. Everybody's all fragmented again.
Right.
Different things. So help us talk through that, because that is the essence of what we're doing here. We're a meta convener here at Future Capital, and we're trying to figure it out every day. Sarah, it looks like you have something to say.
Oh, I always have something to say. And it's true. And I think that, one of the important components in all of this is that recognizing the humanity that we all bring forward and trying to see the human in the other person, and delaying certain labels and assumptions. And I think that's a very powerful kind of component that we can bring forward when we're dealing with everything that you just mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really important issue, Lawrence. I think one of the key lessons I took from my biomimicry studies is this amazing model of the natural world where the variety is infinite, right? It's all so exquisitely attuned to local conditions and specific function. And yet it's also completely cohesive in terms of core design principles. And so I'm finding in my current professional work, I'm using the phrase design principles more and more often. I'm trying to take very tactical conversations and kind of elevate them a little bit so we can see the common sort of direction. And if you have that common direction, the tactics can vary and should vary. I think in finance, we love nothing more than standardization, because then we can calculate all kinds of things in fancy ways. And the questions before us right now maybe shouldn't be standardized, but the goals can be held in common. And so sometimes I use the analogy of it's like a great big potluck supper. Like everyone cannot bring the cups. You need a great variety of stuff to make it actually work, but we're all coming to supper and we're all going to share, this combination of shared purpose and then the diversity can be in the specific approaches to achieve that purpose. Often in finance, we do it the other way around.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'd add, Lawrence, that everyone agrees that there's a problem, but we can't get agreement on what the solution is because we can't even get agreement on what the problem is. And so, and people get very wound up and very intense. You can even see it happening in the chat about their point of view about what the problem is and therefore what the solution needs to be. And it's more like we're all running around with a puzzle piece, right? Or we're all running around with one brick that fits somewhere in some building. But we each think we have the brick or the puzzle piece. It's like, no, you have a puzzle piece, not the puzzle piece. The puzzle won't be complete without it. And in that sense, it's absolutely central and essential. But there are lots of other puzzle pieces too. And the thing that we're really not good at as a society yet, there are people who've developed systems for doing this, is how to get disparate stakeholders with differing points of view to coalesce on a common win-win solution. Can be done, but for the most part, we're actually not even trying to do it. We're trying to win the argument about whose point of view is the correct one, which will not lead to a solution.
Can I add on to that, Tim? That's so true. And then I think there's another added layer to it is also, are there also missing puzzle pieces?
We probably have to build some.
Oh yes, exactly. Build some voices, and and that's the question. People say, well, let's make sure everyone is represented in the room, right? We have a diverse stakeholder group, and everyone's represented, and they're at the table. But the question is, does everyone feel comfortable sharing their true puzzle piece and their true voice? And that's the question that I'm like, it's not just bringing the people to the table. Let's make sure that those voices are comfortable being shared and heard and seen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, when I look at the people here that have joined us today, many I know, a few that I don't. I know that every single one of you has a brick. And, and I also know that, when we began Future Capital, one of our, right, Steve and Patty and Heather, one of our main tenets was, you need to be we'd like you to be somebody leading out there in action in the world in your different stakeholder representation, but you got to show up with your glass half full. Because you know we don't need any full glasses showing up at the table. There's plenty of those meetings. So everybody's voice matters here. And please, this is what we are nurturing, as Sarah was saying, is, you know, creating this environment of safe space. And what Catherine was referring to, and also Tim, where, you know, take a risk, be vulnerable, because, you know, it's probably the voice that wants to speak less right now, who's on with us, who probably has the most profound thing to say. Am I right, Sarah?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And
that's, oh, sorry.
No, go, please.
And that's why I would say one thing I always say is like, be curious through a lens of compassion. Be curious with yourself and others, and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask, because that's going to bring out more voices.
Say that one more time for us, Sarah.
Be curious through a lens of compassion. And the reason why I put the lens of compassion, because when you're curious through a lens of assumption or judgment, that's going to create blockage and not have a full true dialogue. But when you're approaching someone and you're curious, like, hey, Lawrence, why, what, you know, all these different questions, but you're approaching it from a lens of compassion, so much more comes out, and you're creating an empowering space for yourself and the other person, and more of those different puzzle pieces are formed. So that's something that we try to always encourage through our work.
Awesome. All right, so we've got 5.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Hi, this is Tal from Tel Aviv.
Hello, Tal.
Erev Tov, Tal. Nice to see you. It's been a while.
Hey guys, I'm off the camera because I've been listening, walking in the fields at the outskirts in Tel Aviv. I'm on this conference call as I'm walking in at the end of the day. I just wanted to, you know, when you said is someone who doesn't want to talk, I'm the guy who doesn't want to talk. And I wanted to tell you that as I'm walking, my biggest concern and what I'm working on, and Professor Kahana is on the call with me, but he's unable to talk.
I see that.
As we told you, my biggest concern is how do I get you guys to work with us together on the project that we took on, the Yehuda and I, that deals with the transformation of nations. It's very much keen to what's been on the call. We've been, for the last 3 years, we've been asking the question, how do we step into the next level of transformation on a global scene, which is not organizational, but it's a nation. We need to transform nations. You know, when Tim was talking about Israel, he doesn't know, maybe I worked with the Israeli Prime Minister, President for a long time. And it takes a while even for that to transform a nation. The question I have for you, or ask you guys, is I'm very clear on the strategy on what we have to do. The United Nations Global Compact and the whole world came out with emergency plan last week. The strategic plans are vivid, more than the ones I met the first time in Brazil, Agenda 21st. We have a plan, we have a strategy, even businesses are coming in. I'd like to know how can we accelerate dramatically our ability to work together and to bring about models for transformations for society at large. I hear us speak, and I appreciate a lot of the conversation had, but I'm asking myself the question, how the hell are we gonna transform the planet into what we must be in 9 years? We have 9.5 years strategic plans. Everybody knows what needs to be done. And what's lacking is our doing it. That's what frustrates me the most. That's what's difficult for me most, being here in the outpost of Tel Aviv and overlooking the Middle East. I'm not satisfied with my ability to engage with you guys and bring your talent and genius to do something that accelerates the work that Will Kennedy and the team in the UN are trying to do.
So
I guess what I'm saying, so I'm asking for help in aligning and troops to come in. I think that's kind of what I don't want to be vulnerable about.
Exactly. Heather, do you have a comment on that, or do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I do. I do love your vulnerability. I love to hear your voice, Tal. My suggestion is that each one of you, when we talk about what we're doing here today, we're gathered here for a reason, we're gathered here for a purpose. We would love to share your story, what you're doing in the world. Tal, what you're doing, what your group is doing. Please, if you want to be considered to speak on a monthly call, send information to info@futureofcapital.org, and we will get you on the list. Tal, we will reach out to you to continue the conversation. And as like any good meeting, we are coming to a close, it's coming to the top of the hour. This is not the end, this is the beginning. We do these.
I'm going to be really rude, really quick. I just wanted to add one thing to that.
Go for it.
Before we wrap it.
Go for it.
Tal, the other thing is just to remind everybody on here who's not involved, we have a very serious consciousness group. That's a working group that's been working at different levels. So there's also a one-to-one connection that we'll connect you with.
Please consider it me as your friend in the outpost, and I'm really asking for your help in the site. There's so much brilliancy, and we are doing some great progress, but we cannot do it without you. There's no way.
Well, let's connect, and we send you a lot of blessings and peace over there in safety, my friends.
And thank you for allowing me to express my, my vulnerability on the call. I appreciate it. I don't tend to do it.
Always a pleasure. Heather, I'm finished interrupting you.
This is perfect. No worries. You guys get to see a little inner workings of our family. This is fantastic. And Tal, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you all for joining us today. As a reminder, these meetings happen once a month, the second Wednesday of every month. Mark your calendar, second Wednesday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. That is actually 11/11, folks. So we have a very special lineup next month coming at live to you. But when I think and reflect about our reason for being here, I think about some of the things from purpose, Tim, purpose-driven, to infecting in the virus and where you are in the world for your reason, to Catherine Collins talking about hope and soul, to Sarah talking about authentic inclusion. And I think, Catherine, you said it so brilliantly that you are all doing revolutionary things, actions in your everyday life, cloaked in this beautiful conventional cloak. So thank you all for joining us. And like any meeting, we actually would like to bring you out into a moment of silence. And while we do that, we start our meetings with a moment of silence, a moment to pause, the power of the pause. And we end and go out on that. Please feel free to disconnect as you feel comfortable. And I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. There is a purpose to life. Find the light inside of you, feed it, fire it up, and let it shine with abandon throughout the world. It will reflect upon you in ways unimagined. For those of you that are familiar with it, it's from Lawrence's book, Secrets of the Seasons. Thank you all for joining us. Be blessed in your day. We are blessed that you joined us. Have a great day, and let's go into a moment of silence together. Everyone, thank you so much. Much love.
Thank you. Thank you.